Good evening and welcome to the Feronia Central School District Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. We start each meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, and if Jameis and Quinn would come on forward and join us. Right on up here, Jameis.
All right.
That's all. Here you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good.
Thank you. What'd you get? Right.
So before we get into tonight's agenda, if we could have a moment of silence for Laura Metzger. She's a retired band teacher who taught maybe 28 years, back in the 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, was it? Okay. So it wasn't the 60s then, but yeah, okay. If we could have a moment of silence for Claretta. Thank you. So we have the agenda for this meeting. The adoption of the consent agenda upon a motion is second. Affirmative vote by members present approves each and every item so designated. So if I could get a motion to approve, and then we can talk about this.
So moved.
Ms. Pell-Fortner, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Johnston. Okay. Is there anything anyone would like to pull out of the consent agenda? What are we banging on here? Oh, it's you. I was thinking it was me. Okay. Before we go for approval, if I could make just one correction, it's just a typographical. On page 3, under 6, Personnel A1, the resignation date effective should be April 19th, not March 19th. So we'll make that one correction for the approval. Oh, just on that?
Because that was the one we, it came in this morning. So.
Okay.
So you're all good.
Okay, I guess I'll correct it on mine. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. So the board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Concerns and comments during this session should be directly related to items listed on the proposed agenda for the meeting. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Okay. So we have the minutes from our last regular meeting of March 19th as submitted. If I could have a motion to have those approved, please.
So moved.
Ms. Gallo? And a second.
Second.
Ms. Hahn. Any questions, corrections, amplifications? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the Financial Treasurer's Report and the 2024-2025 budget update. Mr. Lix, I'm assuming that
I'll start and pass it over to Mr. Forbes. Yeah. So this is our second evening meeting where we've had some information about the budget. As we talked about last week, New York State has a deadline of April 1st to complete their budget, which solidifies some things for us in terms of state aid. That has been extended 3 times at this point. The current extension is through April 11th, which I believe is Thursday. So we are still continuing to monitor and hopefully feel like we can get some clarity prior and leading up to our next meeting on April 23rd. Again, trying to create a budget with somewhat of a moving target presents some challenges. Some of the things that Mr. Forbes will talk about tonight are some of the unknowns that are still in play. that have us kind of hesitant to finalize. I realize other districts are comfortable moving forward with their estimated numbers. In talking with superintendents at our last local meeting, many of those districts are not looking to add a whole lot of staff. Remember that we're looking at adding our ARP staffing, which is a little bit more than $400,000. Some of those districts also have a high fund balance, and not that our fund balance is necessarily low, but not at a level that it used to be. So we are continuing to monitoring before finalizing, and Mr. Forbes will give us an update on where we currently stand and some of the work yet to be done.
This evening we'll run through the second draft. I've got about 12 slides or so just to update where we stand today. So on this one, I've updated the proposed 24-25 budget, which is the middle column. We've gone from 6.71% budget increase last time to 5.76 this time, which leaves us about 172,000 above reaching the level of the property tax cap, which we'll talk about in a minute. The bulk of the changes from last time occurred in three areas. Materials and supplies was reduction mostly through just going through the submitted budgets and making sure things are coded properly, and a couple minor changes there. The bigger differences occurred in the contractual expense, where we were able to adjust some athletic expense and custodial expense, and also whittle away a little bit of our transportation. In the BOCES services, we also took a look at actual placements currently versus what I had projected, and that's an ongoing process as well. So those are the main areas that we were able to address. Salaries, benefits, equipment, and debt service are the same as you saw in the last group of slides. On the revenue side, there was only one change here, and that would be the reduction of the tax levy. That's the corresponding offset to the changes we had on the expenditure side. So the tax levy has been reduced by about $330,000 from what you saw last time. That then pushes through the state aid tax levy comparison at the bottom. So the state aid percentage of the budget went from 48.3 to 48.8, and the tax levy portion went from 47.7 to 47.2. And that'll happen, any adjustment we make other than to the taxes will affect that and create your levy percent to be lower and your state to be higher. I also added a slide I took a look at some of the past presentations that we had in other years, and one of the slides that seemed to be requested along the way was a summary of our debt service, just breaking it out by year and breaking it out by project. And so you can see as we've gone from 21-22 on the left to 24-25 on the right, you'll have a corresponding increase in the amount of principal being applied against your debt and a corresponding reduction in the amount of interest applied against the debt. Kind of just like a home mortgage, where you get more principal on it as you go along. We do have a number of unknowns. Doctors kind of outlined the state process. Right now, there's still in the proposal from the governor's restoration of all safe harmless cuts, rejecting the proposed amendment to the foundation aid formula calculation, providing a minimum 3% foundation aid for all districts. And those three things combined, we don't know how that rolls out for us yet. In our original runs, our foundation aid was not a bad number. And so the typical way is that the legislative budget is never worse than the governor's budget, but we also don't know how this lands. So we're hoping that we're at least the same, if not better. And hoping that certainly we don't have a reduction in what they proposed initially. There was an extender, as Dr. Zaks mentioned, until April 11th. However, they're anticipating that that will be extended again because the negotiation sessions for the budget were scheduled for today, and there were no updates as of 10 minutes before the meeting. And then they have the next one, not tomorrow, of course, it's on Friday. So you're not going to be able to settle anything before Friday. So that automatically means there's another extender, which further delays what we're able to do. We also have a number of things that we're still working on. I have to get with Ms. Farrow and review the BOCES high cost placements, make sure that I've got both remaining students from this year and any projections that she may have. We've had conversation back and forth, but we do that number of times as we go. Also need to look at our WAVE, which is the remote learning for high school students. We've added 3 or 4 of those since middle of January, so I need to track the grades for that and talk to Mr. Paschke about those. We're also still looking at the transportation costs and monitoring our utility costs to see if there's any room for adjustment on those. Also within this, we do not have final equalization, final assessment, which are typical. That's a summertime thing. We do the tax levy, final BOCES costs, which in part would be affected by my conversation with Mrs. Farrow. And also we don't have the final staffing in this budget yet. Some of the bigger ticket items that are affecting where we're at right now, occupational education, we're up 3 students, which is a kind of a win and a lose. Obviously, the cost is the loss, but the fact that we have children and students that want to go there and learn the programs that are available to them is a good thing, and our numbers have been increasing steadily in that area the last few years. We had to bring over the computer-assisted instruction area, iReady and Ingenuity, which in part were funded by our American Rescue Plan funds. So we picked up those. Change in New York State Employees Retirement System, which is a given percent. We have to budget for what they ask for. Our workers' comp premiums are up a little bit. Our health insurance is up a little bit. And obviously the transportation. Big jump this year, then it levels out at 2.99. We also have the next capital outlay for 24-25. This would be continued blacktop replacement at Wheelock School and classroom flooring there, and also required architect's fees for that. If we do any outside work, a reminder that we have to have $10,000 worth of inside work, which is the classroom flooring, so we're covering that. As far as retirements and resignations, we have 5 individuals that retired. We've replaced them in the budget. And there's one of those individuals that was also eligible for the staff retirement certificate contract, so we included that. Inclusion of the salaries for all positions funded under the American Rescue Plan is $487,000 in salary plus corresponding benefits on top of that. Taking a look then at our current budget proposal, we're at $36,648,250, which is $172,435 above our tax cap levy limit. That represents a 5.76% increase in spending, and you can see comparative years going back to 2015-16. In terms of the tax levy limit, our levy limit is 1.71%. We are currently at 2.73%, or the $172,000 I mentioned a moment ago above the tax cap. If we're defeated twice, we have to comply with the administrative cap. We are currently 53,000 under that, so we're good there right now. And the last slide, I just put in the changes in the budget for this proposal. So 24-25, we're now at a 2.73% tax levy in this draft. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged 1.6%, and the tax levy limit for us this year is 1.71, which is a 5-year average of 2.22%. And then you can see on the right-hand side, which we've discussed before, the number of years that we've been at or below the cap.
So what's the amount that you need to reduce the budget by to get to the 1.71?
172,000.
Okay.
And with that number, Mr. Forbes, how much is coming out of reserves?
Nothing will be applied if I can get there without touching the fund balance. We're trying to do it through finalizing numbers of things I mentioned, and also if there's any additional state aid we can apply against it.
Okay, so if you increased the amount from reserves by $171,000, you'd be at the tax cap.
Yes, that would not be recommended, but that would be the case, yes.
From $0 to 171.
Yeah.
Really?
From this run, what would be our fund balance in this?
Right now, I'm applying 800,000 instead of $1 million, and then I'm working really hard in my mind and in the numbers to try to get that down a little more.
What would that give us for reserves percentage-wise?
Pretty close to what we were, so right around that 4%, because this year's still going to be, we applied $1 million, so unless we get the $1 million back, there'll still be a little tip there, and then the thought process is to get it down when we're applying and make it a lower number, and then hopefully come back up a little bit next year.
But this year, 4%.
Unless something really good happens.
Did you just say you were applying $800,000 from reserves?
In this draft, yes.
That was the number I was asking for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, and you were going down to 0, and I'm thinking,
No, I thought you meant just.
you're doing really well.
No.
Okay, that's good. Yes.
So just to be clear, is the goal, are we going to try to get to 1.71?
Well, ultimately, that'll be the decision of the board, but the goal that I have, and that Dr. Zidox and I have talked about, is we know what the cap number is, we got all the positions that we're trying to keep in there, get to the cap, and go from there.
Yes.
Dr. Zuliak, I see that we have all of the ARP positions still in this budget. Have we had additional conversations on prioritizing needs and knowing that we have several requests that are out there? How are we balancing that?
Yep, so, it'd be nice, again, to have the finalized numbers, which would bring us some clarity. I think we've talked about the fact that, right now, within the budget is 174 full-time equivalents, within the really, instructional teaching staff. Our goal is to keep it there. That includes, those positions that were attached to ARP. May we need to adjust and shift slightly how we utilize those 174 slots. That's possible. Like I said, a clean number would help us really have clarity and be able to really finalize exactly where we want to be and what shifts might be necessary.
So we have 174 positions that are in the budget.
Correct.
We haven't fully designated who or what those 174 will be.
I would say the vast majority of yes, but, you know, we're, again, thinking about what the needs are, what have the requests been, and how can we fit those into
Okay,
what we have allocated.
okay. Thank you.
So at this point, we're in our typical gray area of not having the state aid run, and so it's difficult to, until you have that, it's difficult to
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
go further.
I wouldn't say that in my mind, I'm expecting we're gonna get $1 million of additional aid or anything like that, but anything you get helps make the decisions that we have left on the table.
Is there a hard deadline for them? Or not?
Steve?
They can just keep on? Keep on.
We saw it last year, and it's been a while, but there's been longer deadlines than what they have right now.
Now, when is our drop dead date? I shouldn't say it like that, but we have to accept a budget for voters at the next meeting on the 23rd, correct? Okay. And if we don't know, then we just go with the information we have
Best
available.
guess, and hopefully they'll get it figured out.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's where we ended up last year, which then came the additional monies
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
you know, so it would just be nice if we knew the parameters and the limitations of what we're trying to plan for. I'm optimistic that that'll happen, but, you know, it's in Albany at this point.
So,
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
On the list of the high ticket numbers, the Edgenuity and iReady, what grades does that serve?
So iReady primarily elementary into middle school, and again, that's our diagnostic and monitoring. Edgenuity, I'll defer a little bit to Mr. Paschke here. We've been using as part of our summer program. And I think a little bit more when we were coming out of or in the midst of the pandemic. I'm not sure, Mr.
We
Paschke,
have
if you have
11
anything
students
to-
currently using Edgenuity through the BOCES WAVE program, which is an online school.
Mr. Hawk?
this presentation, did you send this out at all to us?
No, we actually finished it up this afternoon.
Okay, so this is the first time we're seeing this?
Yes.
Okay. I just didn't know if I missed something.
No, you didn't.
And then, I guess, where I'm a little more interested in looking at your budget history is we had a 428% increase in funding last year over the previous year. So we went from $635,000 to over $2.73 million. So that's in this year's budget. I guess I'm really not getting a clear understanding as to where this year is ending to understand how that's going to affect our fund balance.
Well, the fund balance is going to be based on your final expenditures and your final revenue. So in your, anything that we have for state aid, we know what that number is. It was changed, obviously, after we adopted the budget last spring, and then we had some adjustment, we did the tax levy. So that's a hard number, and you don't always get exactly to the penny for the state, because there are some audit processes, so that's, we know what that is, and we know what the levy is. So on the revenue side right now, the big difference is the amount of money we're making on treasury notes. So right now, we're gonna be probably over $200,000 for the year. I budgeted 50, so that's 150 of good on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, right now, we're tracking, I think the last dashboard I gave you was somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 to 600,000 under what we budgeted. So those two things will combine to be your fund balance. So if you roughly round it out, say 600 and 150, that's 750 of fund balance, but you apply the million. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you're gonna have a little bit of a dip there because you're still eroding it, and then hopefully by adjusting 800,000, we can then level it out. So the second year will be better.
So in explanation similar to what you've been just saying to me and everyone, I've seen years where we actually added to the fund balance with that explanation. So usually what I try to do is look at 3 years. I look at the last year that just was audited, the current year, and then try to look forward in understanding that. I heard a number of 174 staff. On record here, 2022-23, we had 171. So did we add 3 staff that are currently in this budget? Not the budget that we're talking about coming up, but 23-24.
Yes, because you had, at the time of the tax levy, we added a special ed position, and then, two, right? So that would be different from the 22-23.
Okay, so is that the additional staff that was added in July with the additional monies that we received after the state finalized their budget?
Well, there was one position that was actually in the budget, so that would be, the number you gave, the 171, was at the end of 22-23. So we had one that was in the budget process that was approved by the voters, and then we had 2 that we added after that, but as part of the tax levy where we offset it with the extra revenue.
Well, I'm more concerned with how our year ends because I'm looking at that large additional monies that we received in comparison to the previous year. And the previous year, we showed $1.2 million in the deficit, according to the auditors. So if we took that from there, we're still over $1.5 million in additional funding and new monies for our budget. So, I mean, I would like somewhat of an understanding as to where those additional fundings to this year, 23-24 budget, have been utilized. I mean, I know that your numbers up there are inflated, but I'm looking for actual cost because you're working in the $1 million of fund balance. Well, 800,000.
Yeah, I'd have to put that together. I don't obviously have that here, but yeah, we can get you something.
Because I would like to know if we're going to end up at an addition to the fund balance, additional money's going into our fund balance.
I would say, if I had to say right now, that we would not be adding to it, that it would come down a little this year.
Okay. Even with the $1.5 million after we paid everything. So,
because you're pulling in, you know, the different expenses that we saw last year, the increase in transportation, the increase in special education, additional positions that we put in, all those things combined to offset that.
okay. So I guess it would be interesting to see. I know that we get our dashboard, but it really is budget numbers. It's not actual costs. We don't see actual costs until October sometime from the auditor. And
Well, other than on the dashboard, I'm projecting what I think it's going to end up at. That's obviously not 100%. But.
Right. Because I remember Brian offering you a dozen donuts.
Wait a minute.
The year before, you didn't let me finish. A well-placed pause. So, yeah, I mean, what I'm looking at from the auditor is we got $4.8 million of fund balance, and that's appropriated and unappropriated. And to that, we can utilize some of those funds that were at one time unappropriated and became appropriated towards our budget to reduce cost. And we're not working with that 3 to 4% that we're trying to maintain it unappropriated, right?
Yeah, anything that's restricted, you would have the ability, each one has its own set of rules, but there are ways that you can bring back, like the tax tertiary one, that was an assigned amount based on potential assessment changes. So you're at the point you could go back and say, all right, we don't feel we need this anymore, that a board motion brings it back in, then it becomes part of your unappropriated, then you can either use it as part of your unappropriated against the budget or reassign it to some other restricted fund balance.
Okay. And the teacher's retirement system, the TRS, will be the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can only, add in the budget sheet that you give us, utilize the amount that you allocate for the TRS, right? We can only withdraw that much from our fund balance.
For that specific cost, yes.
Right.
That's correct.
And how much do you have in there this year?
In that reserve?
No, in the TRS in this budget.
Estimated cost is basically 1.5 million.
So we could withdraw it that much.
Well, you can only withdraw up to the amount that's in your reserve, but yes.
Okay. Because we have a couple of reserves under the TRS. I don't know what those
No,
amounts are.
one's employee's retirement, one's teacher's retirement. Teacher's retirement gives you that flexibility, so let's say it's 300,000, you could pull that 300 out of the reserve and apply it to your cost if you wanted to. Just that's just further eroding your total available fund balance.
So at this point, you're not pulling any of that money?
No, there is a process of where we have to be involved with that.
But we could pull it because that's what it's there for.
Yeah, but really, if you can, any of the reserves, I think the tax reserve is a good one to look at, because I think we are overfunded there. But like the teacher's reserve, there's limitations on how long you can fund it for, and with increasing costs, that would be a reserve you'd want to look at adding to, or your capital reserve, with the idea that you have a project coming up, if you had any shifting of reserves, that might be a better thing to look at too, so. It's a little more than just that, yeah, certainly that would be a
So
short
could
answer.
you also give us a list of the budget in appropriation for the fund balance that make up this fund balance that we could withdraw from?
Sure.
Because we're always withdrawing from the unappropriated and whittling that down. But here, we've filled these other accounts which have a label of appropriated, but we're not tapping them.
No.
And I don't know what we're saving them for. If not for offsetting taxes, because it was taxes collected that created a surplus to put in the fund balance. So,
Right, and then the 150 for the capital reserve that we have, that would obviously be something you'd be looking at applying as part of the financing of any project you may or may not do, so that would be a natural move.
So do you expect to have an updated dashboard for next meeting?
Yes.
So that we see what your expectations are for the remainder of the year?
Yes.
See where we stand before we approve a budget for the
Typically,
coming
I
year?
tie it in with closing out a month,
Great.
and so that's all the same. And
Okay.
Dr. Zodax asked me last week, and the bank statements were here yet, so we're here now, so you'll definitely have it.
You've got a lot going on with the budget, but I think that it would set us with factual information with what's happened in the past, 9 months, so that we can see where we need to be for the coming year.
Yeah, and I think the last version you had also didn't have this proposed budget, and there's a column for it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that was on there, so I'll
Correct.
update that too.
Correct. Okay, wonderful. Any other questions on the budget?
yes.
Yeah.
So we were promised a workshop when we were talking about this, you and I. And I think we had brought it up at some point. But I think it would be helpful to have a workshop, a public workshop, just to deal with where we're at with the budget. And have a little clearer understanding, because the information like we went over this evening was all brand new to me. So I really wasn't able to come up with questions. And if we're going to be at our next board meeting, actually deciding on the budget, there's a lot of information to go over. And even if I'm the only one there, I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, we have a budget forum. We will have a budget forum scheduled for the 23rd, correct? Prior to the meeting. And then we will go over the budget in its entirety, and we can raise any questions then.
Okay, so then the information would be helpful to have prior to that meeting.
Yes.
Well, I also agree with Mr. Hawk that if the final budget that we're presenting to the public were to discussing it for the first time the night we have to approve it, it might be beneficial to.
Yeah, even a week earlier.
To have it before.
No, for a discussion, not just us to have it individually.
I'll verify also, the other option would be to, I believe, Kate, the 30th is the final day
Yeah.
in terms of backing up from the actual vote,
That is.
so that would be another option too.
It would be, but it's definitely not one that NISBA suggests we do. That's kind of if, you know, we have swarms of locusts that interrupts the first option, then we can do it, but it's best not to push it that way.
Well, we'd be like the state.
Yeah, okay.
So let me put it to the board then, if you'd like it a week before, where we can discuss it as a board in hand, would there be an opportunity to have a workshop on the 16th, 6 o'clock?
I think the only question is if we don't have the
State-
same.
the state law.
Yeah, but
That's
we're,
doing it.
yeah, but we're gonna be in the same position we were last year too.
Yeah, true. We have the best guess for next week.
Yeah, we get to, that Friday before, where we stand at that point, and then if something, if they're not settled yet, we have to adjust on the fly, we still have 95% of the information in front of you to look at beforehand. So, we can do that.
Would that be possible?
Sure.
Okay, nothing's on the calendar for the 16th.
A little earlier, but
Okay,
we're good.
Ms. Han?
And you say workshop just for the board, but that would be open to the public,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Okay?
Yeah.
Good with that? You'd have the dashboard for that, for the 16th.
We should be able to, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay, good discussion. Moving on, we have the contract with the Management Advisory Group. If I could have a motion to bring that to the floor, please. Mr. Hawk, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Colo. This is a continuing contract from year to year. Any comments, Mr. Lorax?
No, annual resolution, no major adjustments here. The major piece is really helping us manage any Medicaid protocols or reimbursement. And that is helpful to us. It can be somewhat complicated, a little complex, so we just want to make sure we're doing everything by the book, and they are helpful.
Now, this is aidable, correct? Not this.
So they generate, what they produce to Medicaid generates a lot of it.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes. So is this been put out to bid?
It's a professional service, so it's not required, so there's only a couple companies that do it. This company we had a long relationship with, so no, we did not.
I don't remember the procurement policy reading a professional company not needing to be bid out.
Architects, lawyers, management advisory, they're all considered professional.
And so we've added a person in the business office. Why are we not looking at doing this in-house?
The position that was added in the business office was a replacement of a retiree, and honestly, this is very complex. It would be a pretty steep learning curve, and then even then I'd be a little uncomfortable.
But something you could learn?
I'm sure they could. This is all this company does, this division, so they're on top of everything.
How much would the regulations on this change from year to year? It's not the same from year to year.
No.
Everything changes. So you'd have to stay on top of this, changing regulations, putting in a lot of time, education, re-education
What,
for one business, whereas they're doing it for, I don't know how how many schools they consult with.
There's two, as far as I know, there's only two major companies in the state that do this, and Management Advisory is the larger of them.
So I know this is a tough question, but if we allocated someone else from the business office to re-educate themselves and handle what Management Advisory Service does, how much of their salary, how much of their time would be spent towards this? Half?
It'd be a lot. I'd have to get with Kristen on that, because there's things that she supplies that I don't know, and I supply that she doesn't know, so.
More than 11,000?
Probably.
Yeah. And they do, and Management Advisory Group, that's all they do. So they would be on top of it. They wouldn't make the mistakes that someone from your office could.
I mean, they hopefully wouldn't, but
Yes.
they request lots of information from us, from me, financial information, and then there's a student reporting aspect that comes through the special education office.
Presumably, right, they're identifying significantly more than their fee in terms of aid that we're getting back.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna probably be around 200,000 of Medicare aid this year. It's all based upon what they're reporting for us.
So we're a weak link of, we're paying money to save money, because they're finding money.
Yes.
Anything else?
Just what was the second company, if there's two companies, what was the second company's price, or have you dealt with a second company?
Not lately. This had come up a couple of years ago, I think, when we approved the contract, and I had gone through and talked to them, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It was, in my mind, it was fairly close, but I couldn't give you an exact quote.
If there's no other questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have the resolution for participation in BOCES cooperative bidding. If I could have a motion to bring that to the floor, please. Paul Fortna and Ms. Hahn.
Second.
Mr. Ziliaks.
Again, annual resolution, no major change here. This allows us to take advantage of bulk and group pricing that we would not be able to get as an individual district. And that's typically very helpful. And those items within their purview.
Any questions from the board? No? Not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have hearing from the public. The board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. Does anyone like to address the board tonight? No? Okay. So we have on our agenda discussion items for second meeting for the Board of Education member term length, follow-up on this. And I know that at the last meeting, Mr. Johnston was not here, so we didn't hear his comments, but Mr. Aaron is not here. So I guess I would just pose it to you, Mr. Johnson. Any comments? You've listened to the meeting from 2 weeks ago.
I did.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
It's like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I guess it was 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for tabling the discussion for me to respond, because I wasn't expecting that, so I really appreciate that. Try to be brief. I understand all your positions, because I did listen to the tape online of the discussion, so it sounds like, there's varying points of view. Oddly, I'm going to begin with our mission vision statement, and sometimes with these things, something captures you, and what captures me out of the mission statement is that, we as a district strive to have our students become their greatest selves by the time they leave school. And that kind of resonates with me because even though I'm older, sitting on the board, I feel like I've over time, I'm becoming a better board member. I feel like every day I'm more educated, I have more experience, even the discussion tonight helps me. And I'm just far better than I was, I feel, at the start. So, I've been a board member for 5 years now. I think it took the first 3 years just to get my feet under me. And, I understand the view from watching the online meeting that, some people here feel that, serving a 3-year term would be good because, it's shorter, you might get more people, and then they can always rerun. My worry is that what if they don't rerun? And they're just on for 3 years. I feel like, or they choose, they don't get elected or they choose not to run. I just feel like that's detrimental, beyond just for 3 years, because I just feel like you're just hitting your stride at the 3-year mark. I was in education for 38 years, and I thought this would be easy for me, getting on the board and understanding it, but really it's quite complicated. Tonight's budget discussion is a great example. I mean, it is so in-depth, and I'm so thankful for the man to my right here who can answer these questions, because I still, even at my 5-year mark, I'm learning more and more about the budget. I also know that there's a feeling that a 5-year term might hold back some qualified members that might want to run. Fair enough, I get that. I understand that could be happening. But look, I look around this table and I see 6 people here, 5 tonight, Aaron included. Highly qualified individuals. We have great discourse. We come from different areas of professions, which helps our discussions. And we all signed up for 5 years. So I don't see that we have a weakness that we're not getting good volunteers that look after our students. So, and lastly, a real concern I have is, if we go to 3 years, we're compressing 7 seats into a 3-year period. And that's a lot of turnover if you're not reelected. And we can't say that they would be reelected or they'd be even interested in running again. And that's a lot of turnover for a 7-person board, I feel. I mean, that'd be, 2 every year, 3 every 3rd year. In terms of onboarding, and just the experience, I think it's a gift. We all have experience here. We've been on a while, and it helps us. So I guess I'm in the camp of 5 years, as you can see. In this case, it doesn't mean, I just don't feel like the wheel's broken, because I feel no real need or urgency to fix it at this point. That could change though. Maybe my feeling is different next year. But at this point, I feel like, things are running pretty good, and we've had good candidates step up, all of you, over the years. So, again, thanks for tabling this for tonight's discussion so I could weigh in. At the end of the day, I'm 1/7 voice and 1/7 vote. That's all I am. I respect the board's majority decision. But, yeah, thanks for tabling tonight. That was longer than I wanted.
Thank you. So we had quite a discussion at the last meeting. I believe it went 35 minutes. And I guess I would rather not have the same discussion, but if anyone has thought of something different that wasn't raised at the last meeting, that we would discuss it.
So, yes, I seen some piece that we got right before the meeting in regards to how the math works out, because that was one of my questions. at the last. So, you know, with the current seats, with what's going to be changed, how things are going to end up. And am I right in what I read? Did I read it correctly, that if we go to 3 years, we will then be in violation of having to vote in 4 board members at a certain point down the line?
Yep, so I've been working with Ryan Everhart from Hudson Russ on this, and what oversees this is educational law, section 2105. There's a couple pieces in there that I think are relevant for tonight. Is that, and what you're referring to is sort of the second piece that was included in that email. And that one of the things this stipulates is that there's an effort made by the board to stagger the term endings, to not have a year where there's no amount, it's not a majority or anything, just trying to make it so it's staggered as much as you possibly can. So if we were to make the decision to put this before the public, and the public decided like, hey, if you want to reduce to 3, we'd be accepting of that. If we started to do that this year and just ran the 3 years from there, we would come up against a year where we would have 4 board seats up at one time, which he felt would violate the spirit of what's being shared in 2105. The suggestion he had is in that same regulation, it says to start, you could make those initial board terms 4 years, which would then keep us away from 4 seats coming due at one time. However, it would create, as I think Steve was deciding, over 3 years, there'd be 2 seats up, 2 seats up, then 3 seats up over those 3 years. As opposed to now, there's 5 years, and it gives us a little bit more room to spread out those 7 seats. So, as we found out last year, with no seat being available, things can shift a little bit with different people coming on board or leaving terms early, but that was his recommendation, if we were to go in that direction, and if the public in fact supports this.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think just, not to rehash, but I think some very valid points, Steve. I really appreciate, the comments that you made and the connection to Commissioner Pittman. It's a good reflection point. I think there were a number of positives that were also discussed last week, or the last meeting, and so just to make sure that those are also in the context of the discussion and kind of wrapping it up, that, again, I think, Steve, you hit on some of those, but potentially putting it to the voters to allow them to weigh in on that.
Right, I agree. I don't think it's a reflection on commitment. I don't think that it's a 3-year, 5-year, only people who are interested in the 3-year have a stronger commitment. I don't think it's that at all. But I do think I'm in favor of putting it to the public for a vote. I think if we can eliminate whatever appointments we can eliminate is a positive. So putting more elections to the public, anything we can do to help that along, I think I'm in favor of, so.
Okay, so we do not have a motion here, but if someone would like to make a motion to do this, I would accept that motion. But as far as just continuing to go around discussing this, I really, we've already spent 10 minutes today on this. And again, if there's additional information that wasn't brought up at the last meeting, that's fine. But we can talk. As I know this board can do, we can probably talk for another hour on this.
So I'd like to make a motion to do a little slow roll on the change and not go to 5 years, but offer 4 years.
4 years instead of 3.
Instead of 5. Change the 5 to 4 years.
5 to 4, okay.
And that's That's kind of hitting a sweet spot, and it's a slow roll, percentage-wise.
Okay.
I think it's,
I would need to do a little work on what that would look like in terms of terms moving forward, and, yeah, it gets a little hazy when you're trying to piece that together over a couple of years. I'm not saying
Because it does change things quite a bit.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that comment, Mr. Ziliaks, are you suggesting that, how do I want to say this?
I guess I'm just noting
That
that,
this concept would
that
be
I
too
didn't-
difficult to approve tonight and have the appropriate information so that board members understood what we were talking about, the ramifications, really.
I guess I'm just noting that we didn't run 4 years as a
Okay.
possibility consistently. We were looking at 3.
Do you want me to try to
The
clarify
4
from
came up.
Everhart, from my understanding? The 4-year is an in-between, not an all-encompassing. The 4-year is just for the 2 seats that will be available this
I
year.
know, but I
So
think what
maybe
Mr.
it's-
Hawk is
Right, but
suggesting
that's
is
what I
it's
was
just
gonna say,
4.
yeah. And so that would very much change the counts moving forward. We'd have to go back and run the math to see how far out it would be before. We'd have another 4 that might coincide, so it might take a.
Well, would it be appropriate to put forward a different motion, a motion to show?
Well, I have a motion on the table.
Okay.
So if someone would like to second that, then we will vote on that. If I don't have anyone who would second that vote, then it dies right there. So is there anyone who would like to second that motion? Okay. So I don't have a second on that motion. But no one wants to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion
Okay.
to add a proposition to this year's budget vote, I guess you would say, or that day of voting, to shorten the length of a school board term in Fredonia from 5 years to 3 years, with the interim 4-year terms that have been discussed in order to make sure that the term expirations are properly spaced.
Okay. In a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm sorry.
All opposed? And I oppose also. So it falls short of the 4 votes necessary to approve. Okay. Moving on, we have the district calendar draft. If I could have a motion to bring that to the floor, please.
So moved.
Ms. Gullo, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Johnston. Mr. Ziliaks.
Yeah, a couple things about the calendar for next year. There's some contractual obligations to discuss with the FTA and the FAA. We had a chance to get feedback from each. Some of the things that were within those conversations was the idea of the 2-week break at Easter versus the February break, in an informal poll of FTA members, about 70%. More in favor of continuing with the 2-week break. The main justification there is that the large chunk of uninterrupted time from January to, let's just say, late March, mid-April, is a chance or an opportunity to make a lot of gains and see improvements in our students. Last year, within the calendar, we had 4 additional half-days for professional development. Our teaching staff was somewhat split in the effectiveness or the quality of the presentation on those, so we recognized a varying viewpoint, so we compromised it at 2 days as opposed to 4. It's also just noteworthy that as things play out each year, the calendar goes further and further towards the end of June. So this calendar ends on June 27th, which is late by comparison to most of our previous years. You'll note to start the year, we have 3 conference days. One of those would be a district day to welcome people back. Another one would be part of the FTA contract. It would be an FTA day. And as of right now, I think we're looking at using the 3rd day as a day to come back to the 7 habits and really think about how we're utilizing those as adults and how we can begin to involve students. Other than that, you'll see that there's a 2-week break at the winter holiday, which isn't always typical. You'll also note that there is a day off January 29th, which is part of the Lunar New Year celebration that was designated by the governor earlier this year. So over time, we have added a few vacation days as per New York State or federal government. So, any questions about any of those pieces to the puzzle?
I have a couple questions. You did answer my question about the give back days around May, and I just wanted to understand that better, that that's not a contract thing, it's just there's extra days built in.
Not contractual. Probably in half the districts I've been in, this is a practice, a tradition. For example, this year, we don't have any days to give back. It varies from year to year.
Okay. And then we still have days in case there were something to happen between Memorial Day and the end of the year, there's still spare days. Okay. Then my other question, I think I ask this every year, is regarding Regents Week in January. And just with the loss of learning and COVID, do we revisit that each year? One year in COVID, we just had school every day and they gave exams in class. Is that ever discussed again where teachers would, prefer that class time?
Yep. It's been discussed in the past. We didn't discuss it about this particular calendar coming up. I don't know if Mr. Paschke has any thoughts either from the consensus of the teachers at the high school or thoughts from yourself as the administrator.
I would say that the teachers favor having the time to give the full exams in January, especially to give longer exams. If we do it during class periods, it kind of defeats the purpose. They like to have if you have an AP exam, you can give a 3-hour exam that's very realistic to the length of an AP exam. If you have a Regents exam that's 3 hours, you can give a very realistic midterm that mimics a Regents exam, just to give the kids that opportunity to do that. It's also challenging giving all of those exams during class periods and having all of the special ed coverage that we need to have for kids that have tests read, et cetera. Just to have all of the kids here all of those days is very challenging when we can spread it out and have very focused, specific exams on each day.
Thank you.
Yep.
From my perspective, it's not necessarily a right, wrong, or a correct, incorrect. It's just pros and cons and what people are feeling is the value of the exams or the value of the instructional time. And typically, we try to support what the instructional staff is feeling about that time.
Good, thank you.
Just one question. There's no issue with the way things are kind of pushing up against the end of the year there with the Regents. There's no problem with graduation still being in June, right?
Correct. Yeah.
My only question, I'm looking at October, is this similar to what we're doing this year with the half days or partial days and every Friday? Well, three of the 4.
So the 4th is a request from BOCES that we have a go home early drill on that day. It's typically 10 15 minutes.
Yeah, probably 10.
So not really a half day. The 11th and the 15th on this calendar are reserved for parent-teacher conferences, and that's been like this since I've been here.
Right, that's what I'm asking, but I'm looking more so at the 11th and the 18th, because those are half days.
Yes,
Okay, so that's what we've been practicing.
correct. That's not a change.
Okay.
Yep.
And just to acknowledge, appreciating that we are opting for the continuous seat time in the spring, that we are one of two that remain in the county with that we know of, right? So in terms of shared sports teams, in terms of our BOCES schedule, we acknowledge that that may not be ideal for some of those other situations. And I don't know if it happened this year, I know Mr. Paschke, you've offered things over breaks in the past because it's extended, did we do that this year?
Yep.
It's an extended time for students that may not have things to do or may not be in the best situation, so we are then accommodating that extended break with additional activities during the break. So I just want to note that we also have some accommodations and challenges that are created by that 2-week break.
Yeah. Again, I would see it as not necessarily correct or incorrect or right or
Right.
wrong. Pros and cons and some challenges in there.
Right.
And I think we try to be as accommodating as we can for CTE students, students who attend special ed programs.
I think just to acknowledge that those are the pros and cons and risks and benefits.
Agreed.
Any other questions on the calendar? If not, all those in favor of accepting the 24-25 instructional calendar signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. District updates. Mr. Sedlak.
Yeah, just a couple quick things here. Young and Right will be back prior to our next board meeting at 4 p.m. That is a board workshop around the potential capital project and continuation of review of our facilities. Again, that's open to the public, but not necessarily time for public comment. So we'll be digging into, and I'm hoping I can have this for you by the end of the week, so you have some time to review it. The results of the roof scan, the results of the playground audit, the results of the structural review, as well as the results of the athletic topographical survey. Beyond hearing more about those things, we are going to continue with the conversation about potential focus areas for this project and considering next steps. As of right now, based on our last discussion, the focus areas were those maintenance items that we recommended by Young and Right. Some roof work is an example of that. A focus on our athletic fields, a focus on our music suites, and also a focus on our playgrounds, both at the main campus and Wheelock. Related, but not exactly, although we'll touch on these at the workshop, our Wheelock entryway is completed. We are in the process of closing out that project. I think it took us a while to get there, but it's looking pretty good. We did a nice job. Also, we are moving forward, as Mr. Forbes alluded to in his presentation, with the paving work at Wheelock that's scheduled for the summer. We're looking forward to that. We also have had some discussion and some communication through email about the next outlay project, which would happen later in next school year. As of right now, the two focus areas there are the upgrading of accessibility to the playground here on the main campus. The reason for that is by that time, the students who in this moment need accessibility would be attending school here as opposed to at Wheelock. However, the plan is for the Wheelock playground to be part of the larger capital project. And that'll be part of the discussion as well. As Mr. Forbes alluded to, we need to have about $10,000 at least work indoors if we're going to do some site work, which the playground would be. So we're looking at replacing some flooring in the elementary building. I'm hoping to have an agenda for this meeting by the end of this week, along with some summaries of those things I outlined, so you have a chance to review. And again, that would be at 4 p.m. Prior to our next scheduled meeting, which is the 23rd. Okay. Just real quick, wanted to touch on our long-term planning. You might have noticed that we put together a survey to think about our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a district. We had roughly 300 people respond to that survey. We have another meeting tomorrow night. What we're looking to do with this meeting is confirm those trends and themes that came through in that feedback, and then start to make decisions about which one of those topics, themes, will become part of the plan, and maybe which things maybe we put into a parking lot that would be a consideration down the road. Lastly, I'll have some information for you by email as well. We've had some ongoing discussions, although it went to the back burner a little bit with some other things. In moments, we've had discussions about our sub-rates. There will be a recommendation coming to the Board of Education through our weekly communication at the end of this week. And we also look for a discussion on April 23rd as well. So, FYI, that's all I have unless there's any other questions.
So, school nurses, how is that progressing?
So we got some good candidates. I appreciate Mr. Paschke and Mr. Drollinger, since the positions are technically at the high school and elementary school, setting up interviews this week, and we're hoping to make some decisions here by the end of the week or early next week, and get people forward for board approval, and we'll move forward.
And has there been any thought, because we're in the budget process, of this full-time social worker?
Yep. That's part of the discussion around, do we have these slots available, and how can we work that into those existing slots and make that work?
Okay. So we're trying.
We are, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so if I have this correct, we will have a budget workshop 1 week from tonight, April 16th, 6 o'clock here in the library. We will have a Young and Wright will come in for a workshop on our building projects, 4 o'clock on the 23rd.
Correct.
We will have a budget forum right after the Young and Wright at 6 o'clock. And then right after the budget forum, we will have a regular scheduled meeting for the 23rd. Okay.
Right. The workshop on the 16th is what time?
6 o'clock.
6.
Okay. Mr. Johnston.
I'm really excited to hear that we're at the beginning stages of this strategic planning. That's, those are big ticket items and future looking, so really happy about that. I wish today was the eclipse. That's it.
Ms. Villa.
Nothing, I'm noticing, I don't think I'm available on the 16th.
Okay. Ms. Buckle.
Thanks, excited about the strategic planning, next meeting with Young and Wright, see where we're progressing, and then also a thank you. We had a lot of adults and students that went to Costa Rica, fabulous trip. Everyone made it there and made it back, so, but a lot of adults corralling all of those students, which I think is incredibly generous and amazing, so thanks for that.
Mr. Hawk.
I bet a lot of kids were excited to be back to school.
Do you know any?
I'm familiar with those.
No? Lacey! I think the senioritis bug is going around.
A little bit.
Anything to add, Ms. Hahn?
Nothing.
Nothing. Lacey, won a football game. Flag football.
We won our football game against Jamestown 13-0.
Yeah.
We have a game tomorrow against Pioneer, and we have a game Friday at home in the Orange Bowl against Dunkirk.
Great, great, great. Mr. Paskey?
Yes, sir. Next week on Thursday, during period 9, we're going to have our Holocaust survivor speaker coming in. Many thanks to Dave Denz, who puts this on for us each year. As you know, there are very few left. So it's an excellent opportunity, and the board is certainly invited. That will be around 1:30 p.m. in the high school auditorium, if you would like to make yourselves available for that. Also next Friday, we're going to be having a morning 1-hour assembly called Hang Up and Drive. We have 2 individuals that are coming. A husband and wife team, I believe. The wife was in a car accident where she lost both of her parents and she was paralyzed. And she made a miraculous recovery, and she and her husband go around. They've gone all around the country, 3 different countries, almost all of the states. I think 48 of the states, just not Florida or not Hawaii and Alaska. But they do a very dynamic program, so we're going to do that for our 9 through 12 kids on distracted driving. That was the cause of the accident, was texting and driving, and someone slammed into their car. The senior class activities infographic is out and printed. This is now available on our website as well. I sent it to all of the parents over the weekend. Tomorrow morning we'll be having our senior class meeting and going through all of the events and, of course, the expectations for completing the year effectively and efficiently as seniors.
Will there be ramifications involved in that meeting?
Yes, there will.
That's good.
Consequences.
Consequences.
Choices and consequences.
Mr. Paschke, just on that note, we did talk about the recirculating of the code of conduct and having some parent and student engagement around signing off on that this year? On participating in senior activities and those reminders of
yes.
of the code of conduct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. I
Sorry.
thought you were talking about the annual review of the code of conduct. I was like, no,
No,
we're not there yet.
no.
Okay, yep.
Okay, super.
My mistake. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Could I jump in? Is that electronic? Could you send that to us?
Yes, it's actually on the high school website. You can click on it.
Okay.
But I can send it to you electronically individually, or I can just give you this one if you'd like it.
Either or.
Okay.
Ms. Beaumont?
As Lacey mentioned, of course, spring sports are underway. We have a handful of, actually more than a handful, we have quite a few middle schoolers who are participating at the JV and varsity level. And our modified athletics are starting this week with softball, baseball, and track, so that's exciting. And now that we're moving into spring, Quest is fully underway with the preparations for the big hikes. The first one being on the 27th of April will be the one-day hike for our 30 Fredonia students, along with the high school leaders, and then a handful from other districts too. So exciting things.
Very exciting. Yeah. Mr. Drowning.
Yeah, next week, our fabulous PTO kicks off the readathon, where we had a huge, we raised a lot of money last year, and to help our PTO, so we can kind of challenge the kids to read as much as they can. They track it, and last year's reward was they got to silly string the principal. But this year, the reward is the teachers are going to put on a talent show for the kids, so we're excited to do that. I've gotten suckered to the stage to do a little science, so I'm looking forward to doing that, though, so it should be fun. So the kids are going to read for 2 weeks, and then the teachers are going to go on stage. Then our art club is going to Birchfield Penny Art Museum up at, I think it's up at Buff State. It's a beautiful venue, and they really give these kids an individualized tour. They break them down into groups of just like 2 or 3 kids, so they really get a good full day experience. So that's all we got going on. And then state testing begins tomorrow at the elementary school, so that's kind of a busy time. This whole month will be different state tests going on. So that's what we got going on. And tomorrow there's 2 nurse interviews and then 1 on Thursday. So hopefully Friday I'll send a name to the district office to hire. So it's exciting.
Thank you.
A lot of year-end stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ms. Farrell?
We're engaging in a lot of year-end things as well, a lot of annual reunions. We welcomed our new school psychologist. She started today, Antoinette Bedford, so we're excited to have her on.
Yeah. Ms. Piper?
The kids weren't excited to come in the last today. We were debating the parents were more excited than the kids. The kids were excited. We are still ongoing UBK kindergarten registration, so if you know anyone who has a child that can enter, please let us know. That really helps us in our planning for next year. And Spring Picture Day is the 18th, next Thursday, so we'll be doing spring pictures. And we're excited about the double doors working. We're gonna get to try to fob out today.
Spring pictures is supposed to fall?
They do both.
Oh,
There's a lot of change between the fall and spring. So.
I didn't realize this. I learned something. Okay. Mr. Forbes? No. Ms. Morrison?
Just really quickly, from a district level, we were notified today that Fredonia has once again, for the 12th year in a row, been recognized by NAMN as one of the best communities for music education in the country. Fredonia is one of 900, I think, and 75 schools across the country that get this honor. This is our 12th year, so that's pretty exciting. And with that being said, going into that, our symphonic band will be heading and traveling to Chicago on the 17th to compete in the Windy City Classic against symphonic bands from across the country. It's great.
Country?
Shorter than Disney. Shorter bus ride.
Yes. If there's no other business, if I could have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Johnston and Ms. Vella? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 7:20. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, wait, I do. I'm just a little confused, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, I saw that, so I'm sorry about that.
No games tonight?
Tonight?
Stop by.
Friday, though.